Sir Eustace's land supported 3 small villages, none more than a handful of hovels, sheepfolds, and pigs. The largest boasted a thatched one-room sept with crude pictures of the Seven scratched upon the walls in charcoal. Mudge, a stooped-backed old swineherd who had once been to Old Town, led devotions there every 7th day. Twice a year, a real septon came through to forgive sins in the Mother's name. The small folk were glad of the forgiveness, but hated the septon's visits all the same since they were required to feed him. They seemed no more pleased by the sight of Dunk and Egg. Dunk was known in the villages, if only as Sir Eustace's new knight, but not so much as a cup of water was offered him. Most of the men were in the fields, so it was largely women and children who crept out of the hovels in their coming, along with a few grandfathers too infirm for work. Egg bore the Osgrey banner, the Chucky lion green and gold, rampant upon its field of white. "We welcome from Standfast with Sir Eustace's summon," Dunk told the villagers. "Every able-bodied man between the ages of 15 and 50 is commanded to assemble at the tower on the morrow."
"Is it war?"
asked one thin woman, with 2 children hiding behind her skirts and a babe sucking at her breast.
"Is the black dragon come again?"
"There are no dragons in this, black or red," Dunk told her. "This is between the Chucky lion and the spiders. The Red Widow has taken your water." The woman nodded, though she looked askance when Egg took off his hat to fan his face.
"That boy got no hair. He's sick?"
"It's shaven," said Egg. He put the hat back on, turned Maester's head, and rode off slowly. "The boy is in a prickly mood today." He had hardly said a word since they set out. Dunk gave Thunder a touch of the spur and soon caught the mule. "Are you angry that I did not take your part against Sir Bennis yesterday?" he asked his sullen squire, as they made for the next village. "I like the man no more than you, but he is a knight. You should speak to him with courtesy." "I'm your squire, not his," the boy said. "He's dirty and mean-mouthed, and he pinches me. If he had an inkling of who you were, he'd piss himself before he laid a finger on you. He used to pinch me too." Dunk had forgotten that, till Egg's words brought it back. Sir Bennis and Sir Arlen had been amongst a party of knights hired by a Dornish merchant to see him safe from Lannisport to the Prince's Pass. Dunk had been no older than Egg, though taller. He would pinch me under the arm so hard he'd leave a bruise. His fingers felt like iron pincers, but I never told Sir Arlen. One of the other knights had vanished near Stony Step, and it was bruited about that Bennis had gutted him in a quarrel. "If he pinches you again, tell me and I'll end it. Till then, it does not cost you much to tend to his horse." "Someone has to," Egg agreed. "Bennis never brushes him. He never cleans his stall. He hasn't even named him." "Some knights never name their horses," Dunk told him. "That way, when they die in battle, the grief is not so hard to bear. There are always more horses to be had, but it's hard to lose a faithful friend." Or so the old man said, but he never took his own counsel. He named every horse he ever owned. So had Dunk. "We'll see how many men turn up at the tower, but whether it's 5 or 50, you'll need to do for them as well." Egg looked indignant. "I have to serve small folk?" "Not serve, help. We need to turn them into fighters. If the widow gives us time enough. If the gods are good, a few will have done some soldiering before, but most will be green as summer grass, more used to holding hoes than spears. Even so, a day may come when our lives depend on them. How old were you when you first took up a sword?" "I was little, sir. The sword was made from wood." "Common boys fight with wooden swords too, only theirs are sticks and broken branches. Egg, these men may seem fools to you. They won't know the proper names for bits of armor, or the arms of the great houses, or which king it was who abolished the lord's right to the first knight. But treat them with respect all the same. You are a squire born of noble blood, but you are still a boy. Most of them will be men grown. A man has his pride, no matter how low-born he may be. You would seem just as lost and stupid in their villages. And if you doubt that, go hoe a row or shear a sheep, and tell me the names of all the weeds and wildflowers in Watts Wood." The boy considered that for a moment. "I could teach them the arms of the great houses, and how Queen Alisane convinced King Jaehaerys to abolish the first knight. And they could teach me which weeds are best for making poisons, and whether those green berries are safe to eat." "They could," Dunk agreed, But before you get to King Jaehaerys, you'd best help us teach them how to use a spear. And don't go eating anything that Maester won't. The next day, a dozen would-be warriors found their way to Standfast to assemble among the chickens. One was too old, 2 were too young, and one skinny boy turned out to be a skinny girl. Those Dunk sent back to their villages, leaving 8. 3 Watts, 2 Wills, a Lem, a Pate, and Big Rob the Lackwit. A sorry lot, he could not help but think. The strapping, handsome peasant boys who won the hearts of high-born maidens in the songs were nowhere to be seen. Each man was dirtier than the last. Lem was 50 if he was a day, and Pate had weepy eyes. They were the only 2 who had ever soldiered before. Both had been gone with Sir Eustace and his sons to fight in the Blackfire Rebellion. The other 6 were as green as Dunk had feared. All 8 had lice. 2 of the Watts were brothers. "Guess your mother didn't know no other name," Bennis said, cackling. As far as arms went, they brought a scythe, 3 hoes, an old knife, some stout wooden clubs. Lem had a sharpened stick that might serve for a spear, and one of the Wills allowed that he was good at chucking rocks. "Well and good," said Bennis. "We got us a bloody trebuchet." After that, the man was known as Treb. "Are any of you skilled with a longbow?" Dunk asked them. The men scuffed at the dirt while hens pecked at the ground around them. Pate of the weepy eyes finally answered. "Begging your pardon, sir, but my lord don't permit us longbows. Osgray deers is for Luchecky lions, not the like of us." "We will get swords and elms and chainmail?" The youngest of the 3 Watts wanted to know. "Why sure you will," said Bennis. "Just as soon as you kill one of the widow's knights and strip his bloody corpse. Make sure you stick your arm up his horse's ass, too. That's where you'll find his silver." He pinched young Watt beneath his arm until the lad squealed in pain, then marched the whole lot of them off to Watt's Wood to cut some spears. When they came back, they had 8 fire-hardened spears of wildly unequal length and crude shields of wooden branches. Sir Bennis had made himself a spear as well, and he showed them how to thrust with the point and use the shaft to parry, and where to put the point to kill. "The belly and the throat are the best, I find." He pounded his fist against his chest. "Right there's the heart. That will do the job as well. Trouble is, the ribs is in the way. The belly's nice and soft. Gutting's slow, but certain. Never knew a man to live when his guts was hanging out. Now, if some fool goes and turns his back on you, put your point between his shoulder blades, or through his kidney. That's here. Don't live long once you prick him in the kidney." Having 3 Watts in the company caused confusion when Bennis was trying to tell them what to do. "We should give them village names, sir," Egg suggested. "Like Sir Arlen of the Penny Tree, your old master. That might have worked, only their villages had no names either." "Well," said Egg, "we could call them for their crops, sir. One village sat amongst bean fields, one planted mostly barleycorn, and the third cultivated rows of cabbages, carrots, onions, turnips, and melons. No one wanted to be a cabbage or a turnip, so the last lot became the melons. They ended up with 4 barleycorns, 2 melons, and 2 beans. As the brothers Watt were both barleycorns, some further distinction was required. When the younger brother made mention of once having fallen down the village well, Bennis dubbed him Wet Watt, and that was that. The men were thrilled to have been given lords' names, save for Big Rob, who could not seem to remember whether he was a bean or a barleycorn. Once all of them had names and spears, Sir Eustace emerged from Standfast to address them. The old knight stood outside the tower door, wearing his mail and plate beneath a long woolen surcoat that age had turned more yellow than white. On front and back it bore the Checky lion, sewn in little squares of green and gold. "Lads," he said, "you all remember Dake. The Red Widow threw him in a sack and drowned him. She took his life, and now she thinks to take our water too. The Checky water that nourishes our crops, but she will not." He raised his sword above his head. "For Osgray," he said ringingly. "For Standfast." "Osgray!" Dunk echoed. Egg and the recruits took up the shout. "Osgray! Osgray! For Standfast!" Dunk and Bennis drilled the little company amongst the pigs and chickens, while Sir Eustace watched from the balcony above. Sam Stoops had stuffed some old sacks with soiled straw. Those became their foes. The recruits began practicing their spear work as Bennis bellowed at them. Stick and twist and rip it free. Stick and twist and rip. But get the damn thing out. You'll be wanting it soon enough for the next one. Too slow, Treb. Too damn slow. If you can't do it quicker, go back to chucking rocks. Lem, get your weight behind your thrust. There's a boy. And in and out and in and out. Fuck 'em with it. That's the way. In and out. Rip 'em, rip 'em, rip 'em. When the sacks had been torn to pieces by 1,000 spear thrusts and all the straw spilled out onto the ground, Dunk donned his mail and plate and took up a wooden sword to see how the men would fare against a livelier foe. Not too well, was the answer. Only Treb was quick enough to get a spear past Dunk's shield, and he only did it once. Dunk turned one clumsy lurching thrust after another, pushed their spears aside, and bowled in close. If his sword had been steel instead of pine, he would have slain each of them 6 times. You're dead once I get past your point, he warned them, hammering at their legs and arms to drive the lesson home. Treb and Lem and Wet Wat soon learned how to give ground, at least. Big Rob dropped his spear and ran, and Bennis had to chase him down and drag him back in tears. The end of the afternoon saw the lot of them all bruised and battered, with fresh blisters rising on their calloused hands from where they gripped the spears. Dunk bore no marks himself, but he was half drowned in sweat by the time Egg helped him peel his armor off. As the sun was going down, Dunk marched their little company down into the cellar and forced them all to have a bath, even those who had had one just last winter. Afterward, Sam Stoop's wife had bowls of stew for all, thick with carrots and onions and barley. The men were bone tired, but to hear them talk, every one of them would soon be twice as deadly as a Kingsguard knight. They could hardly wait to prove their valor. Sir Bennis egged them on by telling them of the joys of the soldier's life, loot and women chiefly. The 2 old hands agreed with him. Lem had brought back a knife and a pair of fine boots from the Blackfire Rebellion to hear him tell it. The boots were too small for him to wear, but he had them hanging on his wall. And Pate would not say enough about some of the camp followers he'd known following the dragon. Sam Stoops had set them up with 8 straw pallets in the undercroft, so once their bellies were filled, they all went off to sleep. Bennis lingered long enough to give Dunk a look of disgust. Sir Eustace should have fucked a few more peasant wenches while he still had a bit of sap left in them old balls of his, he said. If he'd sown himself a nice crop of bastard boys back then, might be we have some soldiers now. They seemed no worse than any other peasant levy. Dunk had marched with a few such while squiring for Sir Arlen. Aye, Sir Bennis said. In a fortnight they might stand their own, against some other lot of peasants. Knights, though? He shook his head and spat. Standfast's well was in the undercellar, in a dank chamber walled in stone and earth. It was there that Sam Stoop's wife soaked and scrubbed and beat the clothes before carrying them up to the roof to dry. The big stone washtub was also used for baths. Bathing required drawing water from the well bucket by bucket, heating it over the hearth in a big iron kettle, emptying the kettle into the tub, then starting the whole process over again. It took 4 buckets to fill the kettle, and 3 kettles to fit the tub. By the time the last kettle was hot, the water from the first had cooled to lukewarm. Sir Bennis had been heard to say that the whole thing was too much bloody bother, which was why he crawled with lice and fleas and smelled like a bad cheese. Dunk at least had Egg to help him when he felt in dire need of a good wash, as he did tonight. The lad drew the water in a glum silence and hardly spoke as it was heating. Egg? Dunk asked as the last kettle was coming to a boil. Is aught amiss? When Egg made no reply, he said, Help me with the kettle. Together, they wrestled it from the hearth to tub, taking care not to splash themselves. Sir, the boy asked, what do you think Sir Eustace means to do? Tear down the dam, and fight off the widow's men if they try to stop us. He spoke loudly, so as to be heard above the splashing of the bathwater. Steam rose in a white curtain as they poured, bringing a flush to his face. Their shields are woven wood, sir. A lance could punch right through them, or a crossbow bolt. We may find some bits of armor for them, when they're ready. That was the best they could hope for. They might be killed, sir. Wet Wat is still half a boy. Will Barleycorn is to be married the next time the Septon comes, and Big Rob doesn't even know his left foot from his right. Dunk let the empty kettle thump down onto the hard-packed earthen floor. Ronder of Pennytree was younger than Wet Wat when he died on the red grass field. There were men in your father's host who'd just been married too, and other men who'd never even kissed a girl. There were hundreds who didn't know their left foot from their right, maybe thousands. That was different, Egg insisted. That was war. So was this. The same thing, only smaller. Smaller and stupider, sir. That's not for you or me to say, Dunk told him. It's their duty to go to war when Sir Eustace summons them, and to die, if need be. Then we shouldn't have named them, sir. It will only make the grief harder for us when they die. He chewed up his face. If we use my boot... No. Dunk stood on one leg to pull his own boot off. Yes, but my father... No. The second boot went the way of the first. No. Dunk pulled his sweat-stained tunic up over his head and tossed it at Egg. Ask Sam Stoop's wife to wash that for me. I will, sir. But no, I said. Do you need a clout in the ear to help you hear better? He unlaced his breeches. Underneath was only him. It was too hot for small clothes. It's good that you're concerned for Wat and Wat and Wat and the rest of them. But the boot is only meant for dire need. How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes and one. What did your father tell you when he sent you off to squire for me? To keep my hair shaved or dyed, and tell no man my true name, the boy said, with obvious reluctance. Egg had served Dunk for a good year and a half, though some days it seemed like 20. They had climbed the Prince's Pass together and crossed the deep sands of Dorm, both red and white. A pole boat had taken them down the Greenblood to the Planky Town, where they took passage for Old Town on the Galley's White Lady. They had slept in stables, inns, and ditches, broken bread with holy brothers, whores, and mummers, and chased down 100 puppet shows. Egg had kept Dunk's horse groomed, his long sword sharp, his mail free of rust. He had been as good a companion as any man could wish for, and the hedge knight had come to think of him almost as a little brother. He isn't, though. This Egg had been hatched of dragons, not of chickens. Egg might be a hedge knight's squire, but Aegon of the House Targaryen was the fourth and youngest son of Maekar, Prince of Summerhall, himself the fourth son of the late King Daeron the Good, the second of his name, who'd sat on the Iron Throne for 25 years until the Great Spring Sickness took him off. So far as most folk are concerned, Aegon Targaryen went back to Summerhall with his brother, Daeron, after the tourney in Ashford Meadow, Dunk reminded the boy. Your father did not want it known that you were wandering the Seven Kingdoms with some hedge knight, so let's hear no more about your boot. A look was all the answer that he got. Egg had big eyes, and somehow his shaven head made them look even larger. In the dimness of the lamplit cellar, they looked black, but in better light their true color could be seen, deep and dark and purple. Valyrian eyes, thought Dunk. In Westeros, few but the blood of the dragon had eyes that color, or hair that shone like beaten gold and strands of silver woven all together. When they'd been pulling down the Greenbold, the orphan girls had made a game of rubbing Egg's shaven head for luck. It made the boy blush redder than a pomegranate. Girls are so stupid, he would say. The next one who touches me is going into the river. Dunk had to tell him. Then I'll be touching you. I'll give you such a clout in the ear you'll be hearing bells for a moon's turn. That only goaded the boy to further insolence. Better bells than stupid girls, he insisted. But he never threw anyone into the river. Dunk stepped into the tub and eased himself down until the water covered him up to his chin. It was still scalding hot on top, though cooler farther down. He clenched his teeth to keep from yelping. If he did, the boy would laugh. Egg liked his bathwater scalding hot. Do you need more water boiled, sir? This will serve. Dunk rubbed at his arms and watched the dirt come off in long, gray clouds. Fetch me soap. Oh, and the long-handed scrub brush, too. Thinking about Egg's hair had made him remember that his own was filthy. He took a deep breath and slid beneath the water to give it a good soak. When he emerged again, sloshing, Egg was standing beside the tub with the soap and long-handled horsehair brush in hand. You have hairs on your cheek, Dunk observed, as he took the soap from him. 2 of them, there, below your ear. Make sure you get them the next time you shave your head. I will, sir. The boy seemed pleased by the discovery. No doubt he thinks a bit of a beard makes him a man. Dunk had thought the same when he first found some fuzz growing on his upper lip. I tried to shave with my dagger and almost nicked my nose off. Go and get some sleep now, he told Egg. I won't have any more need of you till morning." It took a long while to scrub all the dirt and sweat away. Afterward, he put the soap aside, stretched out as much as he was able, and closed his eyes. The water was cooled by then. After the savage heat of the day, it was a welcome relief. He soaked till his feet and fingers were all wrinkled up in the water, and the water had gone gray and cold, and only then reluctantly climbed out. Though he and Egg had been given thick straw pallets down in the cellar, Dunk preferred to sleep up on the roof. The air was fresher there, and sometimes there was a breeze. It was not as though he need have much fear of rain. The next time it rained on them up there would be the first. Egg was asleep by the time Dunk reached the roof. He lay on his back with his hands behind his head and stared up at the sky. The stars were everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. It reminded him of a night at Ashford Meadow before the tourney started. He had seen a falling star that night. Falling stars were supposed to bring you luck. So he told Tanzel to paint it on his shield, but Ashford had been anything but lucky for him. Before the tourney ended, he had almost lost a hand and a foot, and 3 good men had lost their lives. I gained a squire, though. Egg was with me when I rode away from Ashford. That was the only good thing to come of all that happened. He hoped that no stars fell tonight. There were red mountains in the distance and white sands beneath his feet. Dunk was digging, plunging a white spade into the hot, dry earth and flinging the fine sand back over his shoulder. He was making a hole. A grave, he thought. A grave for hope. A trio of Dornish knights stood watching, making mock of him in quiet voices. Farther off, the merchants waited with their mules and wains and sand sledges. They wanted to be off, but he could not leave until he'd buried Chestnut. He would not leave his old friend to the snakes and scorpions and sand dogs. The Stott had died on the long, thirsty crossing between the Prince's Pass and Vaith. With Egg upon his back, his front legs just seemed to fold up under him, and he knelt right down, rolled onto his side, and died. His carcass sprawled beside the hole. It was stiff. Soon it would begin to smell. Dunk was weeping as he dug, to the amusement of the Dornish knights. "Water is precious in the waste," one said. "You ought not to waste it, sir." The other chuckled and said, "Why do you weep? It was only a horse, and a poor one." Chestnut, Dunk thought, digging. His name was Chestnut, and he bore me on his back for years, and never bucked or bit. The old Stott had looked a sorry thing beside the sleek sand steeds the Dornishmen were riding, with their elegant heads, long neck, and flowing manes. But he had given all he had to give. "Weaving for a swayback Stott?" Sir Arlen said, in his old man's voice. "Why, lad, you never wept for me, who put you on his back." He gave a little laugh, to show he meant no harm by the reproach. "That's Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall." "He shed no tears for me either," said Baylor Breakspear from the grave. "Though I was his prince, the hope of Westeros. The gods never meant for me to die so young." "My father was only 39, said Prince Valar. "He had it in him to be a great king, the greatest since Aegon the Dragon." He looked at Dunk with cool blue eyes. "Why would the gods take him and leave you?" The young prince had his father's light brown hair, but a streak of silver gold ran through it. "You are dead," Dunk wanted to scream. "You are all 3 dead. Why don't you leave me be?" Sir Arlen had died of a chill. Prince Baelor of the blow his brother dealt him during Dunk's trial of 7. His son Valar during the Great Spring sickness. "I am not to blame for that. We were in Dorne. We never even knew." "You are mad," the old man told him. "We will dig no hole for you when you kill yourself with this folly. In the deep sands, a man must hoard his water." "Begone with you, Sir Duncan," Valar said. "Begone!" Egg helped him with the digging. The boy had no spade, only his hands, and the sand flowed back into the grave as fast as they could fling it out. It was like trying to dig a hole in the sea. "I have to keep digging," Dunk told himself, though his back and shoulders ached from the effort. "I have to bury him down deep where the sand dogs cannot find him. I have to—" "Die?" said Big Rob the simpleton from the bottom of the grave, lying there, so still and cold, with a ragged red wound gaping in his belly. He did not look very big at all. Dunk stopped and stared at him. "You're not dead. You're down sleeping in the cellar." He looked to Sir Arlen for help. "Tell him, sir," he pleaded. "Tell him to get out of the grave." Only it was not Sir Arlen of Pennytree standing over him at all. It was Sir Bennis of the Brown Shield. The Brown Knight only cackled. "Dunk the lunk," he said. "Guttin' slow, but certain. Never knew a man to live with his entrails hanging out." Red froth bubbled on his lips. He turned and spat, and the white sands drank it down. Treb was standing behind him with an arrow in his eye, weeping slow, red tears. And there was Wet Wat, too, his head cut near in half, with Old Lemon, Red-Eyed Pate, and all the rest. They had all been chewing sour leaf with Bennis, Dunk thought at first, but then he realized that it was blood trickling from their mouths. Dead, he thought, all dead. And the Brown's Knight brayed. "Hey, so best get busy. You've got more graves to dig, lunk. 8 for them, and 1 for me, and 1 for old Sir Eustace, and 1 last one for your bald-head boy." The spade slipped from Dunk's hands. "Egg!" he cried. "Run! We have to run!" But the sands were giving way beneath their feet. When the boy tried to scramble from the hole, its crumbling sides gave way and collapsed. Dunk saw the sands wash over Egg, burying him as he opened his mouth to shout. He tried to fight his way to him, but the sands were rising all around him, pulling him down into the grave, filling his mouth, his nose, his eyes. Come the break of day, Sir Bennis set about teaching the recruits to form a shield wall. He lined the 8 of them up shoulder to shoulder, with their shields touching and their spear points poking through like long, sharp wooden teeth. Then Dunk and Egg mounted up and charged at them. Maester refused to go within 10 feet of the spears and stopped abruptly, but Thunder had been trained for this. The big warhorse pounded straight ahead, gathering speed. Hens ran beneath his legs and flapped away screeching. Their panic must have been contagious. Once more, Big Rob was the first to drop his spear and run, leaving a gap in the middle of the wall. Instead of closing up, Standfast's other warriors joined the flight. Thunder trod upon their discarded shields before Dunk could rein him up. Woven branches cracked and splintered beneath his iron-shod hooves. Sir Bennis rattled off a pungent string of curses as chickens and peasants scattered in all directions. Egg fought manfully to hold his laughter in, but finally lost the battle. Enough of that. Dunk drew Thunder to a halt, unfastened his helm, and tore it off. If they do that in a battle, it will get the whole lot of them killed. And you as me as well, most like. The morning was already hot, and he felt as soiled and sticky as if he'd never bathed at all. His head was pounding, and he could not forget the dream he dreamed the night before. It never happened that way, he tried to tell himself. It wasn't like that. Chestnut had died on the long, dry ride to Vaith. That part was true. He and Egg rode double until Egg's brother gave them Maester. The rest of it, though... I never wept. I might have wanted to, but I never did. He had wanted to bury the horse as well, but the Dornishman would not wait. "Sand dogs must eat and feed their pups," one of the Dornish knights told him as he helped Dunk strip the stot of saddle and bridled. "His flesh will feed the dogs or feed the sands. In a year, his bones will be scoured clean. This is Dorn, my friend." Remembering, Dunk could not help but wonder who would feed on Wat's flesh, and Wat's, and Wat's. Maybe there are checky fish down beneath the checky water. He rode Thunder back to the tower and dismounted. Egg helped Sir Bennis round them up and get them back here. He shoved his helm at Egg and strode to the steps. Sir Eustace met him in the dimness of the solar. That was not well done. "No, my lord," said Dunk. "They will not serve. A sworn sword owes his liege service and obedience, but this is madness." It was their first time. Their fathers and brothers were as bad or worse when they began their training. My sons worked with them before we went to help the king. Every day, for a good fortnight, they made soldiers of them. "And when the battle came, my lord?" Dunk asked. "How did they fare then? How many of them came home with you?" The old knight looked long at him. "Lem," he said at last. "And Pate. And Dake. Dake foraged for us. He was as fine a forager as I ever knew. We never marched on empty bellies. 3 came back, sir. 3 and me." His mustache quivered. "It may take longer than a fortnight." "M'lord," said Dunk, "the woman could be here upon the morrow, with all her men. They are good lads," he thought, "but they will soon be dead lads if they go up against the Knights of Coldmoat." There must be some other way. Some other way. Sir Eustace ran his fingers lightly across the little lion's shield. I will have no justice from Lord Rowan, nor this king. He grasped Dunk by the forearm. It comes to me that in days gone by, when the Green Kings ruled, you could pay a man a blood price if you had slain one of his animals or peasants. A blood price? Dunk was dubious. Some other way, you said. I have some coin laid by. It was only a little claret on the cheek, Sir Bennis says. I could pay the man a silver stag and 3 to the woman for the insult. I could, and would, if she would take the dam down. The old man frowned. I cannot go to her, however, not at Coldmoat. A fat black fly buzzed around his head and lighted on his arm. The castle was ours once. Did you know that, Sir Duncan? Aye, my lord. Sam Stoops had told him. For 1,000 years before the conquest, we were the marshals of the North March. A score of lesser lordlings did us fealty, and 100 landed knights. We had 4 castles then, and watchtowers on the hills to warn of the coming of our enemies. Coldmoat was the greatest of our seats. Lord Perwyn Osgrey raised it. Perwyn the Proud, they called him. After the Field of Fire, Highgarden passed from kings to stewards, and the Osgreys dwindled and diminished. 'Twas Aegon's son, King Maegor, who told Coldmoat from us. When Lord Ormond Osgrey spoke out against his suppression of the Stars and Swords, as the Poor Fellows and the Warriors' Sons were called, his voice had grown hoarse. There is a Checky lion carved into the stone above the gates of Coldmoat. My father showed it to me, the first time he took me with him to call on old Raymond Webber. I showed it to my own sons in turn. Adam served at Coldmoat as a page and squire, and a certain fondness grew up between him and Lord Wyman's daughter. So one winter day I donned my richest raiment and went to Lord Wyman's to propose a marriage. His refusal was courteous, but as I left I heard him laughing with Sir Lucas Inchfield. I never returned to Coldmoat after that, save once, when that woman presumed to carry off one of mine own, when they told me to seek for poor Lem at the bottom of the moat. Dake, said Dunk. Bennis says it was Dake. Dake? The fly was creeping down his sleeve, pausing to rub its legs together the way flies do. Sir Eustace shooed it away and rubbed his lip beneath his moustache. Dake. That was what I said. A staunch fellow, I recall him well. He foraged for us during the war. We never marched on empty bellies. When Sir Lucas informed me of what had been done to my poor Dake, I swore a holy vow that I would never again set foot inside that castle, unless to take possession. So you see, I cannot go there, Sir Duncan, not to pay the blood price, nor for any other reason. Dunk understood. I could go, my lord. I swore no vows. You are a good man, Sir Duncan. A brave knight. And true. Sir Eustace gave Dunk's arm a squeeze. Would that the gods had spared my Alyssane. You are the sort of man I had always hoped that she might marry. A true knight, Sir Duncan. A true knight. Dunk was turning red. I will tell Lady Webber what you said about the blood price. But you will save Sir Bennis from Dake's fate. I know it. I am no mean judge of men, and you are the true steel. You will give them pause, sir. The very sight of you, when that woman sees that Standfast has such a champion, she may well take down that dam of her own accord. Dunk did not know what to say to that. He knelt. My lord, I will go upon the morrow, and do the best that I can. On the morrow, the fly came circling back and lit upon Sir Eustace's left hand. He raised his right hand and smashed it flat. Yes, on the morrow.